way, right? To green. Oh yeah,
Well,
I can hear it.
Yeah, is it on now? Sometimes a lot of people come in vans, and sometimes there's one that comes a little bit late. So we
Yeah.
have to wait for that.
Oh yeah, I think just wait a few minutes is fine.
Of course, the vans show up on time at the end, so we have to end on time too. So.
So you want to finish at 8:30?
Say again?
You want to finish at 8:30?
Yes. Yep. Is there a van on the way, or do you know if there's a van on the way, or can we?
I'll look
It's
and
time to
see.
start.
Oh, it is time.
Just thought I'd wait till people got their seats.
So you understand, I'm going to do a promo after your talk and the Q&A.
Okay, what's that? He's going to do a...
He'll just get up briefly and say what's going to be next.
Oh yeah,
In our
fine.
next
Yeah,
Monday thing.
absolutely.
I wonder if am I hearing your mic?
Yes, because it's on.
We better be careful.
Yeah. Let's get water.
Okay, I'm going to go up and introduce you.
Yeah.
It will be brief. Good evening, everyone. It's wonderful to see you here this evening. Chris Palmer is an author, a college professor, a speaker, and a wildlife filmmaker. And I understand that that involved at times camping with wolf packs and swimming with sharks. So this should be a very interesting presentation. Chris dedicated his professional career to conservation issues, but now focuses his considerable energy on end-of-life activism. Chris frequently gives presentations and workshops to community groups on aging, death, and dying issues. In fact, he gave a presentation here at Asbury a number of years ago, and I understand that he did some gymnastics while he was here, too. I don't know if we can expect that. Chris is the author of 10 books. The latest is titled Achieving a Good Death, A Practical Guide to the End of Life. And it is for sale after the program for $20. You'll see he has a few copies down there if you're interested. Proceeds from all of his books fund scholarships for students at American University, where he was on the faculty as distinguished film producer in residence for 14 years. He holds advanced degrees from Harvard and University College London. So please welcome back Chris Palmer.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kate. So I'm going to talk about living well to die well. In other words, how to live a meaningful life and the connection between that and a good death. All my life, I have been scared of dying, fearful. And I'm frightened for two reasons. One is the fear of the dying process. I'm thinking here of the possibility of severe pain, of breathlessness. I have heart disease. 2-3 years ago, I had open heart surgery. I've had a prostatectomy. My father died of prostate cancer, and I'm either going to die of prostate cancer or congestive heart failure or some heart disease. And my doctors tell me that is going to be extremely painful. Breathlessness doesn't sound like much, but it's an awful thing. It's like you're suffocating. So that's one reason I'm scared of death and dying, is the process of dying can be extremely uncomfortable. And we haven't even mentioned incontinence and regrets and dementia and agitation, delirium, and all the other things that can sometimes happen. Isaac Asimov, the writer, sci-fi writer, said, some of you may have heard this already, that life is pleasant, death is peaceful, it's the transition that's troublesome. Okay, now the second reason, I said there were two reasons. The second reason I'm scared about death and dying is the fact of death itself. As I said, I'll no longer exist, and all my projects and relationships will end. Now, if you're religious, as many of you I'm sure are, you may feel a little differently, but for most of us, secular or religious, we are apprehensive about death and dying. We find death a little scary. In fact, a whole academic discipline has been built up. Some of you may have heard of it, terror management theory. Over the last 50 years, this discipline has built up to try and explain how death and dying shapes our fear of death and dying, shapes our behaviors and our beliefs. Now, as I confronted my fear of death and dying, I talked with hospice nurses at Montgomery Hospice, where I serve as a hospice volunteer. I'm also vice chair of the board. And I learned from those hospice nurses, that achieving a good death is more likely if a person lives well, lives a decent life. And that's what I want to talk about tonight, living well to die well. But what does living well mean? And what does dying well mean? So let's start with dying well. And let's talk about what does a good death mean. So, in my opinion, a good death is a death the dying person wants. It's deeply personal and subjective, and aligned with the desires and values of the dying individual. Someone of unwavering Catholic faith may find redemption in enduring suffering. My wife is Roman Catholic. Another might opt for every possible medical intervention possible. But for many of us, a good death is gentle, peaceful, free of pain and suffering, and full of grace and dignity. The dying person is surrounded by their loved ones, has a chance to say goodbye and thank you, and hears from those present how much the dying person's life meant to them. The room is full of loving exchanges, expressions of tenderness and gratitude, perhaps even joyful reconciliations and shared memories of a well-lived life. A good death is characterized by doctors telling the patient honestly that death is near, so that the patient can say goodbye to loved ones. It just really frustrates me how many doctors are so scared of death and dying, they don't mention it, they don't want to talk about it, and so people die without ever really realizing they're so close to death and do not have a chance to say goodbye and I love you to people they love. So talking openly about death's inevitability does not make it more likely to happen. You know, just like learning about sex ed isn't more likely to make you pregnant. Instead, it allows patients to complete their lives with, oh, I hope you can't hear that, can you? Oh, you can't hear that, okay. Oh my gosh. I've got my phone is going off in my ear. I can't believe that. Okay, let me just ignore it. A good death means, you can't hear it, right? You're not, okay, good. Okay, a good death means being prepared to die, having few regrets, and having one's affairs in order. It means to have one's advance directive followed. It means to have one's advance directive and dementia rider followed, and I can explain that in a moment, and to be able to die when one wants to. Above all, a good death means the dying patient controls what is happening to them and their choices. My 3 brothers and my parents all died with none of these elements, and in great pain. And that's a cause of sadness for me. Okay, now, I'm going to take questions throughout. So I want all of you to encourage you to think of questions. You can ask me questions on anything you like, anything about aging, death, and dying. It doesn't have to be what I'm talking about. It could be about green burials, about medical aid in dying, about funeral planning, about advanced directives. You can ask me anything you like. So I'm going to pause every so often. So please start thinking of questions you'd like to ask me about. It could be about human composting, about living well to die well, about anything you like. So please, all of you, start thinking about. I want to make this as interactive as we can, with lots of questions from all of you. So please start thinking of questions. I'll stop again in a minute to take them. Okay, so we've discussed what dying well means. But what about living well? What does living well mean? A person, I wrote a whole book about this called Finding Success and Meaning. And so I discussed it in great detail there. But just in summary, a person lives well if they pursue a life of meaning and purpose. People living well overcome setbacks and failures. They stay focused on their goals and have warm, trusting relationships with other people, with others. Living well has, as all of you know, living well has little to do with wealth, with fame, with possessions and status, and much more to do with focusing on what matters. Now, how do we achieve living well? How do we achieve that? 3 things. Number 1, we need a vision that describes our values and what matters to us. Proverbs, as most of you know, Proverbs has a phrase that says, "Where there is no vision, the people perish." And I agree with that. So first we need a vision, and then we need goals rooted in that vision, and third, we need to act on those goals. So just like the 3 legs of a stool: vision, 1 leg; goals, 2nd leg; actions, 3rd leg. They're all interconnected. So let's talk about a vision for a minute. What do we mean by that? A vision is best captured in a personal mission statement. A personal mission statement describes what matters to you, your values, the kind of person you want to be, the identity you want to have, and what you'd like to accomplish in your life. I've had one since I think I first wrote it when I was about in my early 20s. I did it because I was extremely unhappy and at a loose end. On the outside, I looked successful. I was in the British Navy. I was getting advanced degrees in England and all that. But inside, I was absolutely adrift and living haphazardly and didn't know what I was doing until I realized, it was like a slap on the forehead realization. I realized that in order for me to be happy, I needed to plan out what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to have goals. And so that's where I first started writing my personal mission statement, and I've been doing it ever since, over 50 years. So and I want to point out that it's important to write one, have one, even if you are near the end of your life. You need a vision for your life, a personal mission statement, right up to the end. My personal mission statement is my constitution. It's my true north. And oh, by the way, I'll share it with you. I'll share you mine. Can I send it to you, and you'll send it on to everyone? So I'm gonna send it to Kate Harrison, and Kate's going to send it to all of you. I'll share mine with you, and feel free to, if there's a word in it, a sentence in it, a phrase in it that resonates, that you like, take it. It's yours to use as you want. I mean, take anything in mind that you like. Feel free to take. I'll send it to you. Because some of you may be sitting there thinking, well, what does Chris mean by a personal mission statement? So I'll give you mine so you have an example of one. Now here's a way to begin, because some of you may be also sitting there and wondering, well, how do I write a personal mission statement? How do I create a vision for my life? Okay, so here's one way to do it. Imagine you are entering a big building. And you pull back the heavy doors and you look inside. And you see in front of you 100 or 200 people standing there. They've all got their backs to you. And you're wondering what's going on. And you peer over their shoulders to see what they're looking at, and you see the far end of the building, you see a casket, and you realize you're at a funeral. And just at that moment, standing up to give a eulogy is someone you recognize, someone you love, someone who loves you. You know them very, very well. And they are about to give up a eulogy. And you realize to your fascination that you are a witness to your own funeral, your own memorial service. Now, if some of you don't like this talk about death and dying, imagine instead you're at your 95th wedding anniversary, 95th birthday, and this person's getting up to give a toast in your honor. Same thing. Because the question is, what do you want to hear said about you? What do you want that eulogist to say about you? You know, and as you think about this, I want you to imagine that you've lived a good and honorable life, a decent life. You've done well. You've accomplished a lot. You know, so what do you want to have said about you? So what are the assessments you would like the eulogist to make about you? What character traits and behaviors would you like the person to praise and be grateful for? What have you accomplished? Were you compassionate, kind, and generous? What kind of friend or family member were you? Were you a person of integrity? So and your answers to these questions, as you think of what you would like to have heard said about you, can in effect give you a first draft of your personal mission statement. This personal mission statement is never finished. It's never final because you continually improve it. I must change mine at least several times a week. It's constantly evolving. I'm constantly improving it. It's always a work in progress because each of us is a work in progress. So it's never finished. Having a vision for your life and articulating it in a personal mission statement will help you live a purposeful life full of meaning, thus increasing your chances of having a good dying experience. We should be ambitious and craft a personal mission statement that excites and inspires us. In so doing, we are shaping ourselves into a generous, wise, and creative person who is more likely to make life choices that help us die well. If we live intentionally with gratitude and focus on what matters most, our lives will likely be more fulfilling and our dying will likely be more peaceful. Okay, who has a question for me? Anybody have a question? Put your hand up. Anybody have a question? You can ask me anything you like. Yes, a question. I'm delighted. Yes, ma'am. Oh yeah, he's going to bring a microphone for you. Okay, and let me just say before you start, we don't have a lot of time. So let's keep our questions pithy,
Okay, I'll try.
succinct, concise.
Okay. I read a book many years ago by Andy Lester called Hope in Pastoral Care and Counseling. And the main part of his book is about having a future story. That especially when people retire, they need a future story because they're losing a lot of whatever it was before. And your future story, I've had 3 or 4, because once you accomplish it, you need another future story.
Yeah.
But the whole notion of future story has been helpful to me.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, having a future story. That is not dissimilar from my notion of a vision for your life. A future story is a vision for your life. I mean, they go together very well. Thanks for sharing. That's lovely. Anybody else? Anybody else have a question or a comment? Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Would you describe composting bodies?
Yes. So this is a way of what's called body disposition. Body disposition, it means how you will dispose of your body. There are the conventional ways of doing it are through fire cremation, incineration of the body. The body is burnt at 16, 1700 degrees Fahrenheit, or burial with a heavy casket, concrete vault, and so on. Those ways are very polluting, very damaging. When you embalm a body, you spill a lot of carcinogenic formaldehyde everywhere. So they're not good. Now, 3 new ways have emerged of having a better way of body disposition. And one of them is the one you mentioned, human composting. Human composting, also called natural organic reduction. You put the body in a tube, you put straw, alfalfa, and wood chips around it, and over 4 to 6 weeks the body decomposes, and you're left with just about 600 pounds of beautiful nutrient-rich soil. So it converts the body into soil, which you can then put under trees or wherever. You can do whatever you like with it. So that's human composting. The other way of another green way of body disposition is called, and you've all heard of that, water cremation, also called alkaline hydrolysis. And Desmond Tutu, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, this is how he disposed of his body, because he was very concerned about climate change. And so in this, you put the body in a tube, you surround it by water and with 5% alkali in it, and over about 10 hours, there are different, I don't want to get into the weeds on this, but over about 10 hours, the body decomposes. And you're left with the bones, and then you use a cremulator, as you do with fire cremation, to crush the bones. You get ash. So what you're left with after alkaline hydrolysis is ashes like you have from fire cremation. But the best of all these green ways of body disposition, the best of all is the third way. So I've mentioned human composting, alkaline hydrolysis, but the best of all is green burial. My wife Gail and I are going to be buried at Reflection Park, a new green burial. I serve on the Office of Cemetery Affairs. We license cemeteries. We've just licensed Reflection Park. It's about 20 minutes. It's very close to Silver Spring. 40 acres of beautiful wild land. It's economic. It costs about $5,000. Typical burial costs $13,000-$14,000 in America. So it's economic, you're buried about 3.5. No embalming, no a biodegradable casket or just a shroud. You're buried down about 3.5 feet, where the microbial activity is the most intense, and it's beautiful, and it's been helping to preserve that land. So is that helpful? Yes, thanks for the very good question. So I welcome questions from all of you. Please ask anything you like. So you had another question? Sorry.
Question.
Yes, please.
Since you're knowledgeable about Montgomery Hospice,
Let's start again.
Since you're knowledgeable about Montgomery Hospice, can you let us have a brief view of what in-home hospice would be like for a resident here, or maybe even Keese House?
Yes. So Keese House is a residential with just 14 beds. Quite hard to get into. It's only 14 beds. But most 95% of what we do in Montgomery Hospice is at home. Is hospice at home. So you have a hospice. You can have, if this is your home, you have a hospice here. And what happens is that the team, when you become eligible and you get into the hospice, then we send a team out, doctors, nurses, social workers, to talk, and we bring equipment, beds, toilets, morphine, everything you need for the end of life, and our nurses and aides instruct the family how to use all this equipment, including how to administer morphine if it's needed, and then we also have extensive non-pharmacological therapies, music therapy, pet therapy, touch therapy. And so on, which we offer. But the thing to remember about hospice is that most of the work is still left with the family and friends. In other words, it's not 24/7 care. You all know this. Not 24/7 care. I mean, you have to have help. And so, if you can afford it, it's good to use an end-of-life doula. This is somebody, a non-medical person, who acts as a companion and a helper. They can help you write write your memoirs, they can help you write letters to grandchildren, they can help get organized, they can be just there to help. So the ideal combination is hospice at home with an end-of-life doula. Am I answering your question? Any other questions on that? Okay, great. Yeah, I can talk more about any of these things. So please keep asking questions. Is there another question? Okay, good. Please go ahead. We'll make this quick because I want to go on with the talk. Yeah.
Hi. I have a question or comment I'd like your reaction to.
Sure.
I've come to a conclusion that if I'm diagnosed with Alzheimer's or other cognitive problems, while I'm still functional, I may choose to have some control over my life and simply slowly not eat.
Right.
Which is not a bad death.
Right.
And actually can be it's just you get weaker and weaker and weaker. And because senility and cognitive functions have such a terrible impact on family and friends and cost and emotional cost, that's why I've come to that. Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you. First of all, thank you so much for the comment and the question. So we're talking about dementia, Alzheimer's, and other forms of dementia. As you know, dementia is a terrible disease, just awful, and moderate. And it goes from, it can take 8, 10, as many as 14 years. It's now called a terminal illness, but it takes 14 years. And in the beginning, you have mild dementia. You're still cognitively, still functional, and life can be good. And then you go to moderate dementia, where it becomes much tougher. And then you go to advanced dementia, which can be horrible, where you don't remember anybody, your loved ones. You don't remember your grandchildren. You don't remember names. You don't recognize anybody. You may even behave aggressively, and because there's terrible things that people's personalities can do. And so the question you're raising is how to deal with this, because and so this leads me first to say all of us should have a dementia rider. A dementia rider is simply something you add to your advance directive, which tells people how you want to be treated if you have dementia. So, for example, and the best one to find, I've looked at all of them, the best one to use is the one with compassion and choices. So go to compassionandchoices.org, their website. Just quickly you'll find it easily, the Dementia Values and Tool. And in about 20 minutes, you can fill it out and you will have a dementia rider. Very, very good. What the dementia rider is, it tells how you want to be treated with moderate dementia, how do you want to be treated with mild dementia, and how you want to be treated when you have advanced dementia, when you don't remember anything about you. And on that, for example, you might say, when I get advanced dementia, if I get pneumonia, do not give me an antibiotic. Let me slip away. Come to give me morphine if I need comfort, but let me slip away. So you can lay out what you want. Now, this gets more complicated because of medical aid in dying, which is not yet legal here in Maryland, but I think soon will be. But there are 2 states where you can get medical aid in dying without being a resident. That's Vermont and Oregon. So you could go to, if you want to use medical aid in dying, if you want to hasten your death because you're suffering unbearably, you can go to Oregon or Vermont's closer and take advantage of medical aid in dying. But if you have, come back to your question about dementia, if you have dementia, you can't qualify for medical aid in dying, because for medical aid in dying, you have to be within 6 months of dying. By the time if you have dementia, by the time you get to 6 months of dying, you no longer have decision-making capacity, so therefore you are excluded, you're ineligible for medical aid in dying. So, one idea being discussed widely nowadays by people like me and others is one way to handle this is to go on to what's called VSED, voluntarily stopping eating and drinking, VSED. You start VSED, it makes you shorten your life. That shortened life, you come within 6 months, you go into hospice, and then you can take advantage of medical aid in dying. So this is called the VSED Bridge to Medical Aid in Dying. So just something for you to think about. But it's a terrible problem when you have dementia and you know it's going to get worse. You still have some life left, good life left, but you also don't want to live with advanced dementia. You've seen your parents go through that. You know how awful it is. So what do you do? It's a major problem in this country. Okay, so I hope, was that helpful? Great. Okay, so, oh my gosh. Okay, very quickly, because I've got a lot more to say. How are we doing on time, Kate? No, okay.
There's also the option of giving your body to a hospital for research.
That's
My
a
husband and I both will go to Georgetown Hospital.
Wonderful. That is a altruistic, selfless, wonderful thing to do. So I commend you, and more of us should do that. And it's a great thing to do. It's also very inexpensive. It doesn't cost a thing. So it's a good way of saving money. And it's a very good thing to do because young medical students need bodies to work on. Okay. So we've talked about having a personal mission statement and a vision for your life. This is the first leg of the stool. The second leg of the stool is our goals, which are rooted in that vision. And one way to organize life goals is to group them according to the 4 dimensions, fundamental dimensions of our nature: physical, social, and emotional. I'll put those together: social/emotional, mental, and spiritual. So physical obviously includes exercise, diet, and sleep. Moving our bodies daily, eating lots of fruits and vegetables, and getting sound sleep are all critical. Social, emotional. This includes love, friendship, and community. One goal to consider in this area is writing a gratitude letter. This is a heartfelt letter to someone you love, thanking them for their love and caring. You tell them what they mean to you and what you appreciate about them. When the COVID started in March of 2020, I resolved to write a gratitude letter to my loved ones. So I wrote them to my 3 daughters, who are now in their 40s, and to my wife, Gail, and I ended up writing 60 of them to 60 different friends. These are 5 or 6 pages long. It was a big effort. And it meant a lot. And I realized when I was doing this that, in fact, I was writing gratitude letters, but also it's also sometimes called an ethical will. Anyway, something like that is a good thing to do. Okay, mental. Mental includes learning, studying, and reading. One goal to consider in this area is writing a memoir. I hope some of you have written a memoir. It doesn't have to be long. I've written 3 book-length memoirs, but you don't have to do that. You can write just a 5-page memoir. But leaving something for your survivors to know about your life is important. As I say, it doesn't have to be lengthy. It'll be part of your legacy, a gift to future generations who want to know about your successes and setbacks and struggles. And finally, spiritual, the 4th dimension, spiritual. This includes finding a purpose and meaning in our lives and being in touch with something greater than ourselves. By spiritual, I'm not referring to religious faith, although it will include religion for many. Therapists tell you they see stunning revitalization in people when a newfound purpose comes along. And I put this under spiritual. One goal to consider in this area is to keep a gratitude journal, a thoughtful chronicling of the things we are grateful for. Okay, so setting challenging goals for ourselves in those 4 dimensions is vital because it helps us find purpose and meaning in our lives. These goals should advance the values and vision in our personal mission statement, in our vision. This will help us live well, and thus we're more likely to die well. Okay, so vision is the first leg of the stool. Goals are the second leg. Taking action is the third leg. And that taking action means achieving those goals that you've written down by being highly productive, action-oriented, and skilled at time management. Now, if we do these 3 things, vision, goals, action, if we dictate those things, we are more likely to have fulfilling relationships. On our deathbeds, we are more likely to hear our loved ones say to us, "I love you, I will miss you, I will not forget you, and thank you." Hearing these things helps to ease the fear of death. I deeply regret never telling my mother and father as they were dying that I loved them. It wasn't a phrase we used in our family. When my twin brother, John, died 2 years ago, it was only when I gave his eulogy that I said to him, looking at his casket, "I love you," but of course, it was too late. If a person lives well, they are more likely to declutter and death clean their home. They are more likely to write an ethical will or a legacy letter. They are more likely to complete an advance directive and a dementia rider. If a person lives well, they're more likely to select a health care agent and not neglect to do that. If they're more likely to talk with their loved ones about what they want at the end of life. They're more, if a person lives well, they're more likely to take advantage of palliative and hospice care. They're more likely to decide what type of medical care they want, and if a person lives well, they're more likely to decide what kind of memorial service they would like. They are also more likely to have pondered medical aid in dying, voluntarily stopping eating and drinking, palliative sedation, we used to call that barbiturate sedation, also refusing life-sustaining treatments and other exit strategies as they approach death. Now, I've mentioned some words there that some of you may not be completely familiar with or know, so let me quickly say death cleaning. Death cleaning, you probably all know what this is. It's another word for death decluttering. It means organizing our possessions to reduce the burden on loved ones after death. Because we all know if you leave your apartment or a home hoarded, full of hoarded things, it's very vexing and onerous for our loved ones who have to clear it out. Okay, so and I've used the word ethical will or legacy letter. This is simply a document that outlines a person's values, beliefs, and life lessons to be passed down to future generations. It's a love letter. Advance directive, we already talked about. This is a legal document allowing individuals to outline their medical care preferences if they cannot make decisions for themselves. Dementia rider, I've already mentioned, this is a legal document focusing on end-of-life care and decisions if you have dementia. A healthcare agent, also called a medical power of attorney, or there are lots of healthcare proxy. I call them healthcare agents. This is an appointed individual authorized to make medical decisions on behalf of a patient unable to do so themselves. Palliative care, you all know what that is. Specialized medical care focused on relieving the symptoms and stress of a serious illness and improving the quality of life for the patient and the family. Medical aid in dying, you've heard of that. It's not yet legal here in Maryland, but it is legal in 11 jurisdictions, including in D.C. It's a practice where a terminally ill patient, meaning they have 6 months to live or less, meeting specific criteria, it has to be self-administered, and they have to have decision-making capacity. So an ill patient meeting specific criteria can legally request and receive a physician-prescribed lethal medication to end their life peacefully. Voluntarily stopping eating and drinking, often shortened to VSED. This is a conscious decision by a terminally ill or suffering individual to refuse food and fluids to hasten death, usually under medical supervision in a hospice. Best to do it in a hospice if you can. And palliative sedation, this is the use of sedative medications to relieve extreme suffering by inducing a state of unconsciousness in a terminally ill patient near the end of life. Okay, so a person who lives well and intentionally is also more likely, as I said before, to plan to dispose of their body responsibly and in line with their values. In other words, whether to have a conventional, I mentioned this when I was answering one of those questions, whether to have a conventional funeral with embalming or cremation, with all the associated pollution and waste, or look at greener alternatives like green burial, water cremation, or human composting. And I already told you that my wife and I have chosen a green burial in reflection part because this option reflects our appreciation and reverence for the natural order. I'd spent my life devoted to conservation. It would be absurd for me to my last act on earth be to create pollution and carbon intensity. It would make no sense. So these green burial has a much smaller carbon footprint than conventional burials, embalming, and flame cremation. Okay, now I have lots of handouts for you on my website. My website is chrispalmeronline.com, chrispalmeronline.com, and you can go there and get all these free handouts on funeral planning, also green burial, all sorts of things. So I hope you'll take advantage of that. I want to sum up by saying we must live a good life if we want a good death. To live a good life, we should devote ourselves to building relationships, helping others, and working on meaningful projects and causes. This requires planning, preparation, and living with intentionality. You can't leave it to chance and live haphazardly, as I did when I was a teenager in my young 20s, and as so many people do. A good life is the foundation for a good death. People tend to die the way they live. Any questions, please? How much time do we have? About 15 minutes. Oh, good. Any questions from anybody? Oh, you can ask me anything you like. Yes. Yes, you.
How do titanium or other...
Wait for the mic, please.
Oh, sorry. Yes, the mic's coming.
How do titanium and other artificial body parts impact green?
Good, very good question. Did everybody hear the question? How do how'd you say titanium and other artificial body parts? So they are taken out. So when you have that if you go through human composting, you have they're just taken out. And same with the same when you cremate with fire cremation a body. They're simply taken out and removed and thrown away. Yeah, good question. Thank you. Yeah.
Recently, the BBC America covered the debate in Parliament about assisted dying.
Right.
And just barely it was passed.
Yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit about how it passed and whether you feel that decision would pass here? You lived here long enough to know how wacky our politics is.
Right. Okay, so I was very pleased about what happened in Great Britain, and I think that's a plus for the world, for Great Britain. I won't go into detail here because we're running low on time. We can talk about it afterwards if you like. But I don't think it would pass. I don't think that would happen in America. First of all, it's a state issue, so it wouldn't. We're never going to have a federal law on this. Although in Report 2025 that Trump is now following, it says explicitly there that they are against medical aid in dying. So that was very disappointing to read. Not surprising, but disappointing. And so they may try and do something on the federal level to outlaw it. I hope they won't. But it's very hard to get through because of the Roman Catholic Church, people who think that only God should control when you die and that we should leave it to God to handle. Those people are very opposed to medical aid in dying. So it's a challenge politically to get over that opposition. So we can talk more afterwards. Is that okay? You have a follow-up question? Okay. Great. Someone else had a quick question? I was talking to her. Oh, you were talking. Okay. Anybody else have a question? Anybody else? Okay. So I want to read to you something from my book. This is on page 262. No, 227. Anyway, it's a letter. It's a letter that I wrote to my family. I did it, so I've got a copy here. It's a letter I wrote to my family, and about 2 years ago, and I wanted to share it with you in case some of you would like to do the same thing or use it. I'll send it to you after. It's one of the handouts. So I serve on the Final Exit Network board, the board of FEN, Final Exit Network, and I believe in this mission of giving people at the end of their lives choices in dying, including the choice of a chosen death. If people are facing unbearable suffering and an unacceptable degradation of their quality of life, then I believe, this is just my opinion, you can feel free to disagree, but I believe they should have the right, if they so choose, to hasten their death. A chosen death can be humane, gentle, and wise, and we should all have the right to finish our lives on our own terms. So I think I already told you I have serious heart disease and will most likely, according to my doctors, die a painful death with breathlessness and other awful, painful symptoms. So I wrote this letter about 2.5 years ago. It's just a draft. The date on the final letter, of course, will be later on if I ever use it. But this is what I wrote, and I thought I would share it with you. To my precious family and friends, I have decided to end my life because of the continued pain and unbearable suffering from heart disease. I have decided to, I have lived a full, complete, meaningful, and useful life, but I have had enough and no longer wish to continue. I am a wreck and only a relic of the energetic, productive, and creative person I used to be. I've taken advantage of all the available medical care and interventions. I've decided that further medical treatments are useless and will only hurt me and worsen my life. This decision is mine alone. I am in a rational and calm state of mind and feel completely at ease with this decision. I'm not depressed or mentally unstable. No one has helped me with this decision to end my life, and no one, including the beneficiaries of my estate, has put pressure on me to do so. I support the Final Exit Network and believe in its mission. I've chosen to die now. If I'm discovered before I stop breathing, I forbid anyone, including doctors and paramedics, to attempt to resuscitate me. If I'm revived against my wishes, I shall take legal action against anyone who helped in that action. Please add the following language to my obituary. Quote, Chris took his own life in a rational self-deliverance toward the end of a terminal disease relating to his heart. He did this not out of cowardice or escapism, but because it made no sense to continue living with an unacceptable quality of life when nothing good or loving or kind could be accomplished. He died with a heart full of love, gratitude, and appreciation for all those he loved and who had supported him in his life. So that goes in the obituary. And I ended the letter. Thank you for your understanding. Love, Chris, Dad, Grandpa. Kisses and hugs. So I wanted to share that in case, and I'll send a copy of it to Kate to pass on to all of you in case you find if that useful in any way. I want to read as we finish here. How much time do we have? 10 minutes. So I want to read here from my book. This is page 212. I wrote here, death is a transformative teacher, but few want to become willing students. I hope this book encourages you to become a student of your own end of life and to determine what you can do to achieve a good death. I hope you have a spirited and robust old age. Live as long as possible. Agree only to treatments that align with your goals and have total patient agency. When the time comes, I hope you have a rapid and brief deterioration and a painless death at home, surrounded by your loved ones. I hope you will be serene at the moment of your death and have no fear or anxiety. Okay, I'll take a few more questions. Now I'm going to finish with a peroration. Anybody have? Yes. We're having technical difficulties here. When did you say the question? I'll repeat it.
Okay. First of all, I want to say I completely agree with you.
Oh, here's a microphone. Start again.
About a purpose of life till the very end, which also gives you joy, which is very important, I think. However, I miss one major element in your talk, and I would call that the mystical element. For me, death is not the end. My wife died a year ago. She is still with me, and this is a joyful part of my life.
Yeah, great.
And I think I would like to make a plea for the mysticism. We're all connected, and death is not the end in our life.
Very good. Thank you. That's excellent. I am a secular humanist, so I have a different view of life, but your view is absolutely legitimate and perfectly okay. that's great. That's well said. Who else has a question?
I had a question because it's the first time I had heard about the new green methods of burials or disposition. Are they offered by most cemeteries or mortuaries, or how is that done?
They are becoming more and more common, but you want to go to your funeral home, the one you're going to use, and ask them. Say, do you know anything about it? I was astonished when I went to Pumphrey's, which is near where I live, Pumphrey's Funeral Home, and asked them about green burial. They knew nothing about it. I was shocked that they weren't up on the latest developments in green burial. So you want to work with a funeral home who is knowledgeable about this, who will offer more than simply a conventional burial with a heavy casket and cement burial vaults and embalming or fire cremation. You want a funeral home which is more progressive than that, is more up on what is happening. Sorry, I thought I heard someone say something. So now, you can have a green funeral at what's called a hybrid cemetery. So a hybrid cemetery is a conventional cemetery which has put aside a portion of their land for green burials. And more and more of those are happening. So you might ask about hybrids. You could Google hybrid cemeteries, to see if they offer any conventional cemetery will offer a green burial option. Okay, so your question was where to find them. Sorry, I've lost the. Yeah, so to go about it by Googling it, finding out and calling people, calling a funeral home and saying, "Can you tell me about it?" And there are only 2 green burial sites. In Maryland, there's a Reflection Park where I'm going to be buried, and there's another one just outside Baltimore, 140 acres, very lovely place too. But more will be coming along as the request for green burials increases, which is happening. There'll be more of them coming online. Any other questions? Any other questions on anything you like? Anything? Okay, so I'm going to just finish. Oh, by the way, I bought a few copies. As Kate said, I bought a few copies here of this book, Achieving a Good Death. It's all the proceeds from my books go to fund scholarships. They're only 20 bucks. This is what it cost me $20 to buy them. As an author, I get a reduced price. I pay $20. And so that's all I'm going to charge. So they're $20. If you'd like one, I'm happy to sign it for you. All right. So I want to end. As you heard from Kate, I was a conservationist and a wildlife filmmaker for 35 or so years, and I made several films, including an IMAX film about wolves. And I came to admire these beautiful animals. So let me end with the Wolf Credo by Del Gertz. It goes like this: respect the elders, teach the young, cooperate with the pack, play when you can, hunt when you must, rest in between, share your affections, voice your feelings, leave your mark. This beautiful Wolf Credo is on page 262 of my book. If you want to see it, and that is the end of my talk. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you all so much for coming tonight.
You turn the mic on here, Jesse. As he said, he has books down front, and you'll stick around for more questions
Oh, yes.
as well?
Yes, I'll stick around. And anybody, please come up and talk to me.
Okay, thank you very much, yeah. So on we go. See, the semester is rolling along. Our next talk, everything's going to be back here in Roseboro Theater. The title is Howard Hughes and the CIA. The speaker is our George Stozer. Howard Hughes is known for his wealth from oil drilling and building a large airplane. You remember that? One of his secret projects was raising a Soviet nuclear submarine that sank 3 miles deep called Project Azorian. It was a CIA collaboration during the Cold War, costing about $5 billion, and did successfully raise the submarine and gathered intelligence from it. So that event will be hosted by our Rhoda McKenzie, our photographer. Back in Roseboro Theater here on Monday at 7:30. Have a good evening.